Hello and welcome to another edition of one of my programs. Today we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's disease and coping with the loss. We have some invited guests that I learned about recently and decided to go ahead and include them in my program because as a former certified nursing assistant working in surgery, also working in private residences, and also having health screenings in the community. I was able to find a clinician, and I was able to coordinate a full memory screening in the community, and I was sent just a multitude of material. And the clinician and I, we went through it and we screened, for a couple of days during that particular month. They have what they call memory screenings. Now it's virtual because of the pandemic, but we went ahead and did it in the community. And I really liked it, so I went on in school and received other certifications. I became a practical nurse. Also, I became an administrator in a residential facility right after I finished my residential care for senior certification. And I always wanted to have my own residence to help many, many people that don't have families or just can't remember anymore, or the families can't assist them anymore, or they don't want to live in facilities, they want to live in a residence. So guess what? I got a chance to live my life dream, and I was able to run one. I asked the agency I was working for, since they own several properties and centers, I said I needed some experience after I got my certification. So they allowed me to go in there, and I was compensated because I had taken a job as a CNA to work and take care of a 106-year-old teacher. She taught second grade. What a joy that job was. Today, I'm in two different other nonprofit fields for myself, but in my professional life, dreams do come true. If you think it, so it can happen. I just read a fortune cookie insert, and it was saying that everything you believe, you can make it happen. You can. Most of the time, you can or close to it. So today I chose this program to help you if you have a parent or if you have a family member or a loved one or a friend that has memory loss. You can take this link and help them, with some of the therapy that you're going to hear today. So I'm going to let you go in and listen, and I'll come back and pause throughout the event. Okay?
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did a lot of exploration on death and dying, and she determined that grief could be divided into 5 stages. She worked a lot with people who were terminally ill, so this development was based off of that experience. And so this theory that she developed became known as the Kubler-Ross model. It was originally devised for people who were mentally ill, but the stages of grief have been adapted for so many other reasons, including loss. So you might be familiar with other grief theories. There are many that exist, but I think this one is the most widely known. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, because grief and loss is a really big part of this disease. So the 5 stages of grief, you can see in this little diagram that I've included here, we have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. You may have heard this at some point. If you took any early psychology classes, you probably reviewed it. But these 5 stages are not, they don't necessarily apply to everyone in the same ways. Not everyone is going to experience grief in the same way, and it's different for every person. So you might be coping with anger before denial, and then you might go back to anger. And you could remain in one stage longer than another. There's also, a common misconception that once you've gone through all 5 stages, the grief is over. But if you don't go through all 5 stages, that doesn't mean anything either. These stages were just determined to be a tool to help identify what we're feeling and give it a name. And I think that a lot of us can relate to this, especially this year, just talking about, how we're feeling around the pandemic, and why certain things are happening. So grief can be manifested in many ways. It can impact you psychologically, spiritually, socially, physically, especially. And these are just some of the symptoms that can come from grief. Emotionally, we have guilt, anxiety, relief, which is very normal, but a lot of people, aren't necessarily aware of that. Numbness, loneliness, and then you notice the names of the stages start to pop up: denial, anger, and then physically it can manifest itself in your body. You can change your, sleep schedule can be affected, your appetite, pain, body aches. All of these are, normal symptoms of grief. And it's, again, I don't think I touched on all of them, but this is just some of the symptoms that you can experience. So when you talk about acknowledging your grief, it's really important to do this. Many people might be experiencing the loss of loved ones right now, but you can experience loss of other things. And right now, I thought this was important to include because we're, in the holiday season, in the throes of this pandemic. And it's important to say, if you don't want to celebrate the holidays right now, or maybe you just don't know how, that's totally fine. And whether or not you choose to do that this year, just remember to be kind with yourself. Grief can be a very powerful thing. And so this is something that is really important to acknowledge. So when we're talking about types of loss, like I said, it can be manifested in many forms, and loss of a loved one is the most, I think, common. When you're thinking of loss, you automatically think, I lost this person. But right now we're losing a lot of other things. So loss of routine. We had this schedule that we were going by for so long, and now that's been affected. So slowly integrating even a small daily routine into your daily life can be a good thing for consistency. Sleep schedule is important to kind of set the tone for that. And then we're talking about loss of goals. This year we all had a lot of goals, and we weren't able to necessarily reach those goals because of what's going on in the world. So maybe we just need to reframe how we're looking at the goals that we make. Set small goals throughout your day, throughout your week. And if you check them off as you go, that will be very empowering to you. And it's also important to know, if you don't get them all done, you can only do so much in one day. So loss of goals is another big one. There's also loss of seeing loved ones, which I know so many people are experiencing right now. Maybe your loved ones are in another state. Perhaps they're in a facility that has visitation restrictions right now. And maybe they live close by, but you can't see them because of another obstacle, which maybe you have a pre-existing medical condition, or maybe it's just not safe right now. And this change of not being able to see people the way that we were before can affect us mentally, physically, spiritually. So this is a really big one now. Loss of normalcy and freedom. So, I know I don't have to say this for everyone to know, but there is a new normal right now. We're used to going to the grocery store, going to our favorite coffee shop, and spending time with friends. Even going to work has a new standard set of procedures if you're going into work. So we have to acclimate to this loss along with the other losses. And this will affect, how we feel about being safe. So that turns into a loss of safety. So always listening to the news and hearing what's going on, the fear of the unknown, it can be very impactful on our life. But, just know that going forward, things are going to change, but there is more than one way to experience a loss. And this one, I think most people are, relating to at the moment, but they're not necessarily aware of. When we experience a loss of any kind, you think about the tangible things that you can lose, which, like I mentioned, is a person or maybe the relationship you had with that person, but it can also be a house or a job. And so what people aren't aware of, the lesser known part of grief is, who am I if I'm not this? If I'm not a nurse right now, then what am I doing? If I'm not being, this caregiver to this person, then what am I doing? And so change is a topic that so many of us struggle with. But, regaining our sense of self can look and feel different after we've experienced this loss. We have ideas about how life is supposed to look and who we're supposed to be. And when life doesn't pan out that way, it can be easy to assume that no alternative will ever allow us to have a sense of well-being. But there will always be a deep sense of grief around the people and the things in life that we lose. And just know that that doesn't mean there won't be other things that will bring us that sense of purpose, that joy, that contentment. And then those things will be reintegrated into your sense of identity. So I included in here some tips and strategies that might help with managing these emotions during times like we're experiencing right now. And I mentioned this a couple times. I can't stress it enough. Giving yourself permission to feel your feelings and not allowing other people to tell you how to feel, if it's right or wrong. There is no right or wrong way to feel your feelings. Don't suppress your grief. Acknowledge what's going on. These are going to be very integral to, the process. And some other things that, I didn't mention, it's important to plan ahead if you know that there are things that are going to trigger your grief, like upcoming holidays, milestones. Find a way to engage in these, supportive measures that you have in place so that you can be prepared. Leaning on your loved ones and talking to other people can help alleviate all these stressors that you that might be coming up for you. I know that this kind of goes without saying, but I do think that this has been kind of like a staple this year, doing virtual visits with people. Grief in and of itself can be isolating, and then we're already isolating from a pandemic, so that is another added layer of stress. But connecting with people virtually, if you're able to do that, it's not a replacement for physical connection, but it does help in making you feel less alone in whatever grief you're experiencing right now. Engaging in new or old rituals. This is another important one right now around the holidays. If you used to cook or bake with a loved one and you can't do that this year for whatever reason, maybe you can cook their favorite recipe or look up their favorite recipe and create an art piece around it, create a music piece around it, play a piece of music that reminds you of this person, honor them in other ways, and still have these these rituals in place, just in a different way. And what if you don't feel like celebrating this year or doing anything? Well, you're grieving, and right now is a triggering time of year. So, I can't say it enough. Acknowledge your grief. Know that it's okay. You don't want to celebrate. Maybe you just want to skip the day. Give yourself the permission and know that whatever you choose to do this year, you're doing what's best for you in that moment. Gratitude is a really big thing right now. finding a way in all of the chaos and tragedy that's happening in the world, finding silver linings. It's really effective in helping us refocus some positivity and mindfulness and savoring the little things. So it might seem challenging, but even the small things like maybe your coffee shop got your new favorite holiday drink in and you want to go get a cup and call a friend and pretend like you're together in person. This is a way that you can practice gratitude. And if you don't feel grateful, it doesn't directly correlate to grief. You don't have to choose between the two. You can experience both at the same time. That is perfectly normal. And if you're finding it difficult to seek gratitude, it's okay. If you don't feel grateful, you know, your feelings are valid and nobody can tell you that they're not. A few other quick strategies for coping. I know that I said daily routine. This really can act as an anchor for you and help us to manage the uncertainty and unpredictability that life is handing us right now. But having something to look to and some structure can help reduce our anxiety and the stress about what might the day bring. And taking breaks. You know, our bodies and our minds are greatly affected by stress. And taking a time out right now is kind of hard because if you're working from home, the lines are blurred. Maybe you're taking care of a family member or you're spending time at home with the family, but even a small break, going out for a walk, just a couple minutes a day, giving yourself a change of scenery, this is all going to be really, really important to, you know, processing what's going on. Finding a healthy outlet. I talked a little bit about it already. Journaling, cooking, a social resource like calling a friend, exercising. If you meditate or you pray, these things will help you to kind of work through it. And if you're not feeling like you're up to do anything physically or mentally, you're not ready to be stimulated in that way, even giving your space to let your emotions out and cry, that's a really healthy outlet as well. And if those aren't working, reaching out to a professional, sometimes it's necessary to get the extra support with all this added stress. If you are a healthcare professional, you're probably experiencing compassion fatigue from the last couple months. So that, you are grieving as well. And if you need someone to talk to, please reach out. And so this kind of segues into why you guys are here today, which is to talk about, to talk about how to engage in self-care. And for me, self-care is manifested in art therapy. So some of the tips that I mentioned above are really, good added tools to help us cope and find a way to care for ourselves, redefining what it means in a time when it feels really impossible. So you should start by being kinder to yourself. Know that you're doing the best under the circumstances that you were handed to you, and leading with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this study that was done. There was a psychiatrist who named Dr. Cohen, who pioneered some research into geriatric mental health. And this quote on the screen was something that he firmly believed in. He said, "The brain continues creating new cells at any age, so long as it's engaged in new and challenging activities." So in this study that he did, and there is a bibliography at the end, so you can read that study. It was a 2-year study initiated in 2001, and he suggested that becoming involved in arts later in life not only led to a lower incidence of illness and injury, but there were also chemical changes that happened in the brain. And so what he did was he had 2 groups. He had a control group and an intervention group, and they were heavily engaged in arts-based activities. And so what the study found was that it helped to do things like decrease risk for falls, which is really, really major in this population. Increase tolerance levels, allow them to feel a sense of calm, mastery, and control, lower the necessity for the use of psychotropic drugs, generally improve mental health. These are really, really big factors here. And so I just listed at the bottom the outcomes from the study basically led the people that were involved in the interventions group. It was improved physical health, morale, and activity level, and it decreased the participants' number of doctor's visits, medication usage, depression. So he really was, an advocate for this creative process, and that is why I've really come to know and love.
I have been away for a while because we had memorial. So this is a rare virtual affair, and it's going on right now. Everywhere, hear my voice now. I would like you to take down this particular link and go to the affair today. It is scheduled for
somebody else, maybe someone you're caring for. So some of the supplies that we used are watercolor paints. You can use acrylic paints for this too. 2 pieces of paper and writing utensil and some glue. And so what we started with was creating a painting, any kind of painting, abstract, realistic, and letting it dry, and then finding a way to repurpose this into a mosaic. So you can use a pair of scissors, or you can just tear it with your hands. And by manipulating the paper and reconstructing your painting, it's teaching you how to envision something that once was before in a whole new way, which is kind of what we do with grief and loss, right? You had something before and now it's changed, and how can we move forward from that? So integrating tactile stimulation while exploring the benefits of this allows for an environment where you have, practicing mindfulness, engaging in something that will help with not only your fine and gross motor functions, but giving you the autonomy to say, hey, this is how I want to go about this. This is what I want to do. That's really, really important. This is one of my favorite experientials for grief and comfort, specifically because paper weaving is, I think, something that we do a lot when we're younger and we kind of forget about it. And then now we're finding new ways to integrate that into our creativity. So with this directive, it helps to explore the relationships you have with your loved ones and yourselves. And how you would do this is you would have 2 pieces of paper, some materials, like I think I used watercolor on this, maybe some markers, and something to write with. And on 1 piece of paper, you're creating an image. Again, it can be abstract, it can be realistic, and the other piece of paper, you're writing a letter. So you want to think about whose relationship you're exploring. Is it a relationship with yourself? And if it is, what do you want to say to yourself? How can you move forward with this while you're experiencing this grief? And if it's to somebody else, whether they're here or they're not, what do you want to say to them? And ultimately, you're going to combine these 2 by weaving them together. On 1 sheet of paper, you're going to cut a split, not all the way to the edge, but enough so that you can weave the pieces from the other artwork into it. And because everyone can identify with the idea of loss and trying to cope, this process of cutting up the letter and the artwork and weaving it together is symbolic for picking up the pieces, putting yourself back together again. And it's another way to help express yourself without having to share what's written. You know, when the letter and the image are weaved together, it's really kind of difficult to read. And so this is a piece for yourself to say, hey, you know, this is what I'm working through, and this is what I'm working towards. And it also gives you an opportunity to work through a cathartic release. This is another example of the grief and weaving, except instead of doing an image and a letter, there were two letters. And one letter was to themselves, and the other letter was to another person. And they basically united them in a way to say, you know, hey, this is us. And one of the adaptations that I like to mention here is if you're unable to write, and the person still wants to engage in this activity, have them dictate it to you, and you can write it for them. This way you can work on this together and still feel like you're achieving the end goal. You can also use hand over hand if you're comfortable to guide them in their writing or the creative art making. For this media directive called Postcards of the Past, so you want to have available an index card or something resembling a postcard, and some other creative materials. I gave some suggestions, but these are not finite. You can have whatever materials are comfortable. And you're going to create a postcard addressed to a person from your past or currently in your present, and this will be a person who significantly affected your life. So some things that you want to explore in this activity are, why is this person important to you? And if you could send a postcard to this person, what would the image reflect? What would you want it to say for them to know? And I particularly love collage for this because it is universally accessible. It's not too overstimulating or intimidating. And using a postcard as a paradigm for this population especially stimulates their memory and provides a familiar means of communication. Postcards were the only way, or one of the only ways, to communicate for so long. And so this can bring up a lot of memories for them, allow them to feel in control, and, you know, also explore self-exploration and assess their personal relationships while they're also looking at their personal values. So cognitive remediation here is really, really big. For this one, talking about an anchor. When we're grieving, we need things to help us feel strong, help us feel, you know, like we really have a support system. So who are the anchors, or what are the anchors in your life? And so for this, you're going to want to have a template of an anchor. You can draw it or print one from online, and have some other materials that you can create with here, whether it's collage or paints or markers. And think about who or what the, you know, when you're talking about who or what the anchors are in your life, you can ask yourself, in what ways can they, you know, can you strengthen an anchor? And are there any other symbols in life aside from an anchor that help me feel this way? Anchors as a symbol represent safety, security, stability. So I really find this to be a good tip in helping with those things and amplifying, you know, having us feel stronger. I didn't include any other materials on the outskirts of the anchor, but again, you know, everyone creates in their own way, so feel free to explore. You know, some of the images that I included here are things that I feel really help anchor me in life. My family and art. Taking breaks is really important. Seeing my friends, getting sunshine, you know, at least once a day, and listening to music. So these are the things that help me stay grounded as a person. And lastly, we have what we call blackout poetry, which is becoming, I think, a little bit more prevalent now, although I don't know too many people have heard of it. But I really like this activity because for somebody who wants to create a poem or write, but they don't want to, they can't find the words themselves, you will print out a page from a book or a document and scan it. Look for words that stand out to you, then circle them in an order that makes sense. And when you have something that you feel speaks to you, you can design the rest of the page in a way that suits, your liking. This will help, cognitively stimulate and also give them the sensory stimulation to find a different way of writing that's a little less inhibiting. And if this is still too overwhelming for someone to take on, you can adapt this by utilizing collage poetry, by cutting out an assortment of words in a magazine and arranging them in a way that creates a story, a phrase, or a poem, kind of like the magnets that you might see on a fridge, and you kind of rearrange them. But there are many ways to write poetry that don't necessitate you writing the poetry. So this is why I like this activity. So I just want to say thank you again for everyone for coming, especially to AFA and to Kara. I love always speaking about art therapy and advocating for why this is so important, and hopefully everyone learned a lot. I'm happy to field any questions or comments that people may have. Now is the time.
Yeah, definitely. So we do have the one person who has asked, some of these exercises are very poignant. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, so my apologies. But how important is it to have some kind of visit about the finished product with an understanding of others, since some COVID precautions may preclude this possibility?
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat that because I think I missed.
Yes, no problem. So we have someone who says for some of these exercises, it might be very difficult to try and do this right now because of certain COVID precautions. So, how important is it to have some time to visit in order to do these things?
Well, engaging in an activity like art is always, there is a factor of doing it in person that I think is important, but it's not the only thing. You can do this activity on your own, and maybe there is somebody in the facility who can facilitate it with them, and you can talk about it on the phone, or maybe you can do it on the video. And, this isn't, even though I provided some structure here, it's not the only way to do this activity. You don't have to go through all the steps. So you can adapt it to suit your needs. So I would say, even if you do it for yourself or you have someone, if they're creating art in another way, that's important enough. Something to help express is always, I think, the most important thing here.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, remember that during, COVID times, we might not be able to do everything we want to be able to do right in person with someone. And this varies state to state, based on different nursing facilities or, even visitation if you're going to someone's home. So always check in with that to make sure that things are okay. And then see about other ways of utilizing and being creative with, the examples that Kyle provided about how can we, use this maybe through a technology route if we're not able to have that one-on-one touch with our person.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. We do have someone else, they said they're very excited about this information. Is it something that is possible to send some templates to you?
Sure, that's definitely doable. I included my email here, so feel free to send me an email and you can just let me know. I really liked this, it resonated with me, and I'm happy to share it with you.
Yeah, and so I think that's another important thing is that even sometimes having a set template can be helpful, and it can also be helpful without a template. And so looking around, seeing what's in your home and what are things that can be utilized So I'm really happy that we have Kylie here to connect with as a way for you guys to have someone else on your team as you're, caring for a person or trying to learn more about different art therapy techniques. We had someone who mentioned, is there a way to get supplies for art therapy? So I think that's more direct, like actual.
Like where can they obtain the supplies? There are some nonprofits that will, they've been donating supplies a lot recently within the pandemic. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any specifically, but I can do a little research. If you know somebody in a facility, chances are that facility has them, but if you're thinking more for yourself, there are probably avenues that you can access the materials. So that's something I would have to look into. The American Art Therapy Association website is a great resource I've also included in here, and sometimes they do post about stuff like that as well, so I recommend checking that website out.
Definitely. And we have someone that asked about how would you follow up with someone after doing an exercise if certain feelings came up throughout it, and how would you address it?
So I think it's important to remember that whatever feelings come up, they're valid. So providing reassurance in the best way that you know how, saying, let's talk about this feeling. Why, what were you thinking? What were you thinking about when you made this? And what does it, remind you of? And trying to create prompts to encourage that exploration of feelings. If you come to a point where you're, realizing you're not sure how to exactly navigate someone through their feelings, the best thing that you can do for them is to just validate them and say, I know that was, really hard. Thank you for sharing that. This was really difficult for you, but I appreciate you trusting me enough to talk about it. And it's such a simple response, but I don't think many of us think about that. So just, knowing that and saying that to someone is enough.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, I agree. We have another person who says, how can we motivate seniors or individuals who may be reluctant to participate?
This is a very common thing, people feeling resistant. Something I experience all the time in art therapy, putting paper and maybe markers in front of someone, and they'll say, I haven't used that since I was in elementary school. There is no way you're going to get me to pick that up. But if you find a way to engage them, looking at a blank canvas, even for me, as someone who's been creating art her whole life, sometimes I can be intimidated by a blank sheet of paper. So find a way to engage them in a a dyad situation. Make it a game. Pick up a marker, have them choose a color, and say, I'll draw one line if you draw one line, or can you copy this line and I'll do something in response to that. And maybe after a little while of getting comfortable with supplies, they start to engage more. I know I talked about it a lot also, but that's why I really like collage, because it doesn't involve drawing, and I feel like that is the least intimidating out of all the supplies. You can cut the images out for them beforehand so they don't feel like they have to, you can have them look through a magazine, choose images that speak to them, cut them out, and provide opportunities for choice. Where do you want this image on the paper? How can we incorporate this image with it? Do you think we should fill up the whole page or maybe some of the page? So trying to get creative with the ways that you engage them, and maybe they're not the ones, making the art as like a hands-on activity, but they're directing you, they're telling you what they want, and they still are the ones who created that piece in the end.
Exactly, and I think it always helps to try things out. It's definitely, a trial and error process, and explaining to them, like, let's see how it goes, and if it's something where you notice the feelings might be too much to try, you can pause and try another day. Well, it doesn't have to be something where, someone fully participates to a certain level. And I'll also add to this, Kylie, we also do it with exercise. If someone's not able to do a full exercise, that's okay. If they just move their arm maybe to the side or something, it's still engagement, and that's the most important part about interacting with our person.
Absolutely. I always say, do what you're comfortable with, don't push it, you know, and that will make them feel like they can come back because they're supported in whatever decision they're making.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We do have someone who asked, is there anything specific that you might not have mentioned that are good for art with people who might be more towards the late stages of dementia?
Specific in terms of like an experiential
I think activities. Mm-hmm.
Activities. Okay. You know, I've been doing it a while, and sometimes I find that the best thing you can do is just to get them to engage in a little bit. And one thing that really helps, honestly, is putting on music. If you know what kind of music they like, it'll bring back some memories, and they'll say, oh, you know, I listened to this song one day when I was at this park. And maybe you could take a picture of the park. What was in that park? Was it, you know, were there flowers? What color were the flowers? And trying to trigger their memories is really, really effective through the simplest of things. And I'm not sure if that's the response that you want to hear, but I do think that it's difficult enough and you don't want to push it. So starting with very easy, basic things like music or maybe smell. Smell can trigger a lot of memories too. If you are, you know, if you love aromatherapy or if there's like a perfume, you know, that they love, talk about the memory that they're invoked through that and create a picture about it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think sometimes it's also about what your person is interested in. So sometimes we also need to look at, you know, knowing who our person is to see if there's a certain interest that they appreciate, you know, more in the late stages, or because this disease is very individualistic. Everyone, you know, when this disease impacts your brain, right? We all have grown up in a different way. You know, our environments, our connections with people, things we enjoy or don't enjoy. So it's very important to make sure we remember all of those different things. So that way when we are, you know, planning things around, you know, incorporating art or different mediums, you know, this way we can find something that might pertain to, you know, our person, whether our person, you know, maybe they don't like acrylic paint for some reason. That was not something that they like, but maybe they enjoy, you know, using clay or some modality, which obviously would need to be supervised, you know, because we don't want that to become a hazard. And so, or even just having that sensation of touching it. So definitely, I think incorporate your person, and if they're able to answer a question, you know, you can even ask them and show them the different art activities you want to try and say, you want to do this or do you want to do that? And maybe they say, I want to do that one. Or they don't have words and maybe they nudge towards something. There's some sort of communication signal that will let you know.
Absolutely.
We do have someone else who asked, where is it? Find it. One moment.
Okay.
You're listening to how to cope
said, you know,
when you have Alzheimer's disease. And
you talked about
the guest is giving us
that
some tools what to work with art therapy.
Other than
art therapy.
You know, focusing on sight and hearing, things like that.
Are there ways to incorporate it into art?
Mm-hmm.
There are actually, you know, something that is, you know, kind of developing now with the way that aromatherapy is picking up is including some oils, you know, mixing it in with the paints and having them paint the picture. And, you know, as they're painting, they're smelling maybe they're like also using their sense of touch to feel it, and while they're doing that they're listening to music, so they're engaging the auditory senses. So everything is kind of, the olfactory senses. I mean, it's a little difficult to incorporate taste. I wouldn't recommend it because it can get confusing and they might put the wrong material in their mouth. But if you have someone who's able to know the difference, or if you're working with them and you're able to guide them through it, taste can trigger memory. So of course, maybe, having a little taste of something that they used to cook or their mother used to cook, and then having, some kind of experiential based off of that. But I would say generally to stay away from taste. There are ways to engage the rest of the senses in a safe manner. So that would be my suggestion.
Definitely. And it looks like that's all the questions. We do have someone who recommended, just a website that could be something of helpful. It's called timeless.org, TIMESLIPS. And so this has information on different resources for activities as well.
Thank you so much.
You guys are aware. So we have people who are saying thank you so much. This has been really great. I'm a music therapist and this has been so appreciative. Great to have this information. So at this point, we will wrap up for today. So yes, more thank yous coming through. And I'm so happy to have you here with us, Kyla. And as Kyla mentioned, her information is here for you guys if you want to connect with her, as well as here at the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. Know that the services we have our helpline that's open 7 days a week, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from Monday to Friday, and then the weekends it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is where you can also connect with a licensed social worker about different activities and things like that as well. We also have our own virtual community classes, which Kyla herself has participated in, where we have different vendors or leaders that are coordinated by our manager of therapeutic programming, Jack Gatto, for having virtual programs for people, whether it be art or music, meditation, exercise. So we definitely try to touch on different aspects. So feel free to go to our website at www.alzsdn.org, where you can locate more services, as well as free memory screenings too. And if you have any questions, just give us a call at 866-232-8484. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you again, Kyla, for being here today.
Thank you so much to everyone, and especially you, Tara. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You've been listening to How to Cope with Alzheimer's Disease through art therapy with Kyla. They left all the important information, so I'm not going to go over it. I just would be remiss if I hadn't, placed the program with my program today. And I already gave you an introduction, basically, of some of my credentials working in the healthcare industry. And if you want to know anything else, I can tell you I went to California State University and I studied a course in the health sciences department. And I also took a class in the bachelor's degree for RNs. I'm not an RN, but it was for RNs, but I was able to get into the classes, a course that they take if they want to upgrade themselves. And it was working as an administrator for senior assisted living environments. And I took that course also. And I already mentioned that in the state of California, I received my certified nursing assistant license way back in the 1980s. Not so far back, but I mean, I got it in the 80s. And I also received my home health care certification also through a wonderful teacher in the San Diego region. She allowed me to come in and do it part time. I already had it, but in some states, if you don't use it and recertify, you have to go back and have it done. So she allowed me to come in and do it, and I really thank her today. She gave me a reference. I even wrote her a reference too because she told me I asked her for one, so she wrote me one, and I still have it till this day. I really appreciate all my teachers, but she's one of the standouts because she took it upon herself after leaving nursing to come and teach a full class. That class was so full. I didn't even know how she did it. And this was 5 days a week. And then we had to do our clinical not too far away at a very nice assisted living. And I learned a lot there, and I received my class academics credits for my participation there. So I have several, and then I went to also called the Scam Jam, which is not health related, but it's still related with seniors. I was able to go through the district attorney's office and get my certification there. I also did the one where they do abuse to seniors. That was a thorough and a well done full week. We went through the different types of crimes that are done on seniors. It was well worth it. I really think myself for even finding the time to even go there. So I have been really engulfed with things that pertain to seniors, health wise, security wise, things that pertain to their lives. Because I think they are valuable people in our society until they leave this earth. One of my best clients was the 106-year-old teacher that I was able to provide health care to in her last days, but she was still there after I left because I was there doing what they call, after you receive your certification for an administrator, I was doing my on hands work so I can get the hours. And I was already a nurse, so just combining that. So that was like a highlight of my career. Also, I worked with children in the hospital during my training too. I worked in the children's hospital and in a training hospital in California. So as you can see, I have a wide variety of experience, but I just gave you basically the ones with the senior adult. So I really thank you if you come to this particular link and want to listen. This was well done. The lady they select to do it, very good communication, very good information, all of her research that was done. And the reason why I can really say that she did a good job because I worked with one particular case. And if you have a case that you're dealing with one on one every day, you're going to garner too much experience. Not too much, but a wide variety of experience. I had a biologist and her sister was a homemaker. They both hired me through a private agency to take care of their mom. And while I was there, they mapped out everything because they had already done it. And when they became overwhelmed, they hired professionals to come in. So we went in and did it. So I would spend like a whole weekend every week with her for almost half a year. And she already had a regular lady coming in, the other days of the week, but I went in for 3 days and then I went home. So I was what you would call a live-in professional healthcare provider. And it was something to imagine. If you ever took any classes, because this one today is nothing like learning about Alzheimer's disease, I really want you as a listener, if you can, to go and take a class. You can do it because they have many online. As she mentioned, they have the foundation, the Alzheimer's Foundation. They have regular classes. You can go and take a class to learn what it feels like. And you might have to pick and choose different classes because some of them might have lengthy information, but your learning style won't be able to grasp it. But try to take some classes that are good for you. For me, I used to check out different tapes. I used to go to different seminars. I would take classes. I would listen to people. And the overall of it is I was able to actually work one on one with one particular lady on a daily basis. Now, I have taken care of some others too, but the particular one I'm telling you about, that case taught me a lot. What it's like to lose your memory and you can't even think for yourself. And her daughters, I have to plot them, but I have to come back to you at another time and tell you the story. The story isn't going into any type of violation of privacy. All it's doing is preparing you as a loved one to help someone. Because in my family, as we know it, we don't have Alzheimer's disease in our family. I'm talking about both my grandmother, grandfather, my mom, and dad, all my sisters and brothers. My aunt was a health analyzer, and she told me before she passed away just recently, she said that it doesn't run in our family. So I had no idea what it was like to even visualize not having your memory. But I'm glad that I took classes. I went to the university and studied health sciences for the senior adult. I'm so glad that I did because I wouldn't have been able to. There's just some things in life, if you feel like it's for you, go and take some type of learning so you can have more of a wide understanding of what you're going to do. Because this particular program we had today was excellent. This is my second program of today, and I recently did one on careers. So today, and I've been gone for a while because I had other things going on, and plus we had a relative that just passed away. So I was glad that this was refreshing to even come here and do this for you, the public, today. So I'm going to end, and let's just say I have a few more programs that I want to get done. I'm looking on this particular format that YouTube have here, and some of these topics are saturated with just different types of things. I mean, you could just come on here any week or month and just keep yourself busy all day. I mean, there was a time when I came on here because I didn't come on till the first couple of years ago because when I was in school, they only had what they call the internet. And so we used to get our information for our assignments on there. If you wanted information on news or what's going on, that was the place, this was the place to go. But now everything is here. And just like another young lady I watch on the internet, because she has such a wide knowledge of different topics, I watch her a lot. It's two, well, actually, it's three girls. One is a doctor, one is a RN, then I have another one. She's into fashion and business. She just I mean, only 27 years old, and this young lady, she really gives her all in everything that she does. And that's why I'm saying the internet is a place to go if you want to learn anything, but it's not everything you should accept. But things that you really want to learn, you can do it here. So I'm going to end today, and I want to thank you again for coming and listening to the program today. And I hope you have a very good holiday during this season and also during the current USA um, uncertainty with the pandemic. We'll get through this. Just keep hope. Just keep hope. And we'll get through and have a very good new year for you and yours. And be safe and watch everything that you do because the health community in the States are helping us with They're just giving us everything we need to know to keep safe. And you can too. Just be careful. And on that note, I want to bid you a goodbye and have a great, great holiday.